Hey legends, it's Kiri here. This is a bonus episode of the All Killa No Filla podcast. Don't worry, your Christmas special is on its way. But we thought we'd put out this. This is an edited version of a live show that we did in Liverpool very recently at the Royal Court Theatre. We decided we would get back friend of the show, Maggie Noggy, aka Chris Hughes, to talk about all the weird and wonderful things they have encountered as a drag queen, as a druid, and working in a mortuary. It was just a little experiment to see if this is a live show that maybe you guys would be keen on, because we're fascinated by all that stuff. And it was really fun. And it was so fun we thought we would edit it right down. It was a much longer show, and put out an episode so you can see what you think. And maybe, who knows, maybe we would do a little live tour or something like that. Let us know. We hope you enjoy this. And we look forward to seeing you on the 20th of December. You've sold out the late show at the Birmingham Glee, but there are still tickets left for the early show. Not loads though, so get a wiggle on and we'll see you there. Enjoy.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesday, guys. The Lord's Day. If you really care about him, you stretch out till Tuesday. Thank you so much for coming. This is a little weird...
Where are these two fuckers?
Yeah, where are those fuckers? Table 1. And no one's here.
Table 1.
Do you know what?
Book the tickets and we don't show up because we want all...
Oh, there's another one empty there.
All right.
All right, mate. Fucking hell.
Coming again. Jesus. Actually, true story is I get a pair of tickets in the front row for my parents every time, and they never turn up. So. They're not fucking watching the film. We don't need to see ourselves be fucking humiliated. So, welcome to this. It's a bit of a weird sort of like experiment about something that we thought would be fun to do. We think it'll be, at least it'll be interesting, but it might be dog shit, we might never do it. But we thought we'd come to Liverpool, a city that we've wanted to do anything all killer related with for a while.
Yes.
So this is going to be our Anomalies show, and we'll explain in a bit why it's called Anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it's about ghosts and that.
And if you thought you were here for all killer, sorry. Fucking read the information. It's reflected in the ticket price.
Do you think that we're suddenly being like, near to the last serial killer?
Do they usually look this sparkly?
Yes! They've learned to make it a bit showbiz. So
After the Netflix special.
So this is going to be, Anomalies. Anomalies actually comes from a phrase that you use, Chris, when we were talking about sort of things, ghosts and things like that. I want you to know early on, because it's going to be a little bit more interactive. Make a noise if you believe in ghosts fully. It's weird that you made the noise of a ghost there.
Yeah. Give us a woo.
Make a noise then if you absolutely categorically think they don't exist. So someone who was like, whoop, like that. At the skeptic's corner over there.
Make a noise if you're completely baffled by all of this and not sure why you're here.
Hello, boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then make a noise if you're somewhere sort of like a bit agnostic about it. Like maybe, I don't know, I've never seen, but that doesn't mean I don't think. If it's that kind of feeling. It's weird that we sat them all in different places. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if that was actually two ghosts and they're like, we're literally here. How much fucking more do we have to do?
Fucking rude. Well, actually, genuinely, there is a ghost. I don't know if you know this. There's a ghost. There's a couple of ghosts associated with this venue, and one in particular, and I'll tell you about in a second. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about our individual sort of experiences and beliefs. Someone was laughing at the idea of a ghost being here. Be like, if you saw someone incredibly pale in the toilet, that's someone who's not well. Just so you know. He's not been seen yet. I once thought I saw a ghost on a bicycle, but it was just a really ill man.
Were you on the bike or was the ghost on the bike?
Oh, yeah.
Who was on the bike?
I was getting a seater from a ghost. No, honestly, I was in Manchester and I was in the car and I was driving along and I was like, oh my fucking god, I thought I saw a ghost. But someone else was in the car at the time and they were like, I can see him too. And then we realised we were right by the General Hospital in North Manchester. And I think we've solved the mystery. I don't think we should be doing any fucking cardio, to be honest.
I had a similar experience at North Manchester General Hospital as well.
Where people go to die.
Well, my granddad was in there going to die. I went to visit him with my grandma, and there was a man walking towards us in the hospital corridor, and I genuinely thought he was like sort of blue, and I was going, Granny, nudging her, she's turning away. I'm like, Granny, and he just had loads of tattoos on his face. But from a distance,
He looks dead.
He looked dead, yeah. And I'm going, Granny. He's just got tattoos.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So that's when I thought I saw a ghost as well. In North Manchester General as well. Maybe we did see
Maybe it's a
ghosts in North
hotspot.
Manchester General.
Well, an interesting thing actually is when people talk about ghosts, a lot of people who are sceptical say, well, why, it's where people die, why don't you see them all the time in hospitals? But when I speak to nurses I know, they say like, yeah, you fucking see them all the fucking time.
All the time.
All the time.
Riddled everywhere.
We shall explain our background. So, I'm Kiri, I'm a stand comedian, and I'm fascinated by ghosts and ghost stories. I feel like I have to feel like there's something after you die, just so I get reassured, because otherwise I'll be too sad about my dogs, and probably in about 2 years my parents. So
I thought you were going to say Madonna when you said that.
18 months.
That's how old she looks.
So I have to believe in something, even though I don't really, but I have to believe for me. I find it more reassuring. I would fucking love to see a ghost, but at the same time, I'm fascinated with ghost stories, listen to them all the time. I'm always convinced I can hear stuff in my house, but it's always something that can be easily explained away. So I think I'm probably very suggestible, even though I like to think that I've rationalised myself out of it. What about you, Rachel? And then we'll get to the fucking troublemaker in the middle. I don't mean because he's gay, just so you know. Your jacket's telling us, yes.
I'm Rachel Fairburn. I could be any age between 7 and 52. And I'm obviously a stand-up comedian. I do the podcast All Killa, No Filla with Kiri. And again, like Kiri, I think there's often a crossover between being interested in serial killers and supernatural. I think a lot of people are often interested in both of those things. Been obsessed with ghosts since I was a kid. Since my granddad gave me a book to read that was called Horrible Murder, that I shouldn't have been reading, and it was the Illustrated Police News, and I got obsessed with it because I had drawings of murders in and also pictures of supernatural things. I was 5 years old when I was reading this, and he said, well, as long as it keeps it quiet, there's no problem. And then I've always been obsessed with ghosts, interested in supernatural. I don't know if I believe in it or not.
You told me you've encountered a ghost.
I have had a supernatural experience. I've had two experiences that I can't explain. It's the best way to put it. So the first one is because I was brought up by my grandparents. You can tell I'm a nan kid. We'll get into that.
Honestly, you fucking can't. There's no bit of you that betrays the softness of a nan kid.
You don't see me at home.
I fucking do, and it's worse. It's more unhinged. You're like, when you think of nan kid, when you're like, oh, it's obvious I was raised by my grandparents. I was like, no, I think you were raised by a pack of fucking wolves.
Yeah, elderly wolves. Two experiences I can't explain. The first experience was when obviously I was brought up by my grandparents. Where they were very elderly for grandparents, which sounds stupid, but my mum was the youngest of six, so my grandparents were like when I lived in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And when the day my granddad died, he was at home, he was absolutely fine that day. He just died of old age, but that day it was like the best of my granddad, he was having a great time, he was cracking jokes, but everyone was fine. I went out. When I was coming back home, my mum picked me up from somewhere, and I said, I've got this really weird feeling that I couldn't shake for about 3 hours. I was like, I don't know what it is, I can't settle. I feel like something's going to happen. I feel like it's a big event. I don't know, it feels like either someone's going to get married, or somebody's pregnant, or something. She's thinking, not your fucking sister again. And I'm thinking, something's going to happen, and I can't explain it. It was this overwhelming feeling of something going to happen, right? And I couldn't get rid of it all night. I got back she dropped me off at my grandparents' house, I went in. My grandfather had collapsed, and about 15 minutes before I got there, and then he was taken to hospital, and he passed away before he got to the hospital. So I can't explain that feeling that I had, and I can't explain where I thought. I've never had that feeling since. I've never had it before, and I don't know why I had it on that day. So that's fucking weird.
If you have that around me, don't fucking tell me.
I would never tell you that you would.
I don't want to know. I just want the bus to fucking plough through me.
If you hear me going, have you got your affairs in order?
Who's having the dog when you go, by the way?
Do you know that jewellery you're wearing the other day? Very quickly, the other experience was when my grandmother died. I was in her house that evening. Not that evening when she died. She was the day before the funeral.
A murderer.
I should stress this. So me and my mum were sitting in my grandma's house. My grandma was in the funeral parlour, literally across the road in Manchester. She'd gone in and sorted her own funeral because she was an old woman. She was like, I'm not having you lot messing about when I'm gone. I'll sort it myself. So she's across the road, obviously dead, in the funeral parlour. We're sitting watching the TV in the living room, ironically, and me and my mother believes in nothing to do with supernatural. We're sitting there, just me and her chatting. Obviously we're very upset because the next day is a funeral, and the washing machine in the kitchen had started. And I said to Mum, have you put the washing machine on? And she went, no, I was just thinking that. You haven't either. And I said, no, I haven't. And there was only me and her in the house. There was nobody that could have got in the back way, which is unlike me. I can't even say through the back door. But this is not what...
the washing machine going off as your nana trying to say that you're a dirty bitch from the afterlife?
Can I just stress this is not what she would have wanted? So that happened. So then we were saying like, oh, this is very strange. I don't know what, like, we were going, oh, this is a bit fucking weird kind of thing. About 3 minutes later, after we'd had this conversation, the doorbell went. So I was like, we're not expecting anybody. So I went to the front door. We're not expecting everybody. Everybody's dead. Went to the front door. I opened it. Nobody was there. Now, that might sound stupid, but the layout, you saw the old house. If anyone would have knocked at the door, rang the doorbell, whatever, that you would have seen them on the street. There was nobody there. There was no cars on the road. There was nothing. And me and my mum were like, well, that was a bit fucking weird, wasn't it? And the only thing I can put that down to is, I don't want to think it was a ghost of my gran, because I think that's a bit horrible. What I do think it is probably is, you know, when people are very upset and there's heightened emotion and stuff like that, I don't know, inexplicably, I think that can affect things, and I think that might have been two things that it affected. I don't know.
Or your perception of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. What about you, Chris?
So I'm Kristopher Hughes, and I'm a Welsh language drag queen. Her goes by the name of Maggie Noggy. She's fabulous, isn't she?
Yeah, she's great.
7'2". Imagine a door and add 4 inches. She's fucking huge. And so I met Kiri through Maggie, and we did a Welsh language television programme together a few years ago in the middle of the pandemic.
I know you guys get S4C here, so you'll be very impressed.
But aside from that, I've also worked in a mortuary for the last 32 years. So I retired on New Year's Eve last year, drove straight to Kiri's house for a New Year's Eve party and recorded an episode of Killa, No Filla.
And that's when I met you. That's the first time I met you as well.
Yeah. So I've been around dead people and dead things for the majority of my life, and I was fascinated like you with serial killers and stuff as a kid, you know. So basically I just went, I should have been a serial killer really, but I just went into a profession of legalised corpse bothering.
That's an cardio to that, isn't it?
Yeah. And you don't go to prison for it.
No.
You know? And so I've seen a lot of ghosts, but I don't believe in ghosts. But I've seen a shitload of them. So in my business, we constantly come across unusual experiences and unusual encounters, but we call them anomalies. And in all of the mortuaries, and I've worked in a lot of mortuaries in Britain and also over in the United States, we refer to them as anomalies. Things that we can't necessarily understand or explain away, but they've happened. Indisputably, they've happened. But I don't believe in ghosts. And I'm also a Druid.
Don't throw that in like this little thing on the end. Also I'm a Scorpio. What does the Druidry mean to... Are there ghosts in Druidry?
Well, we do have a thing called ancestor veneration, where we might honour the memory of our ancestors, and that we carry the songs of our ancestors within us. But some of our ancestors can be a little bit problematic.
I don't know how that feels. As a white British person, I can't possibly imagine.
Well, I've had a lot of problematic ancestors in my family.
But you wouldn't... Would you get like apparitions culturally within the bardic tradition?
No, not necessarily. So a lot of ghostly encounters, we've always had ghostly encounters as a human species, going all the way back to animism, to pre-literate cultures, we've always had ghosts. So regardless of how advanced we think we are, how technologically advanced we think we are, we still continuously believe in ghosts. So you only have to walk into this city and there are enormous buildings that have been built for the adoration of ghosts. And we fill them every Sunday. They're just called churches and cathedrals and chapels. But there's still, that's very hard, there's a supernatural quality to it. So we've always, so those stories, headless, there's always a headless ghost, isn't there? Wherever you go. Anywhere in Britain there's a headless ghost. It's like, well, why have they lost all their heads? It's like,
we did love a guillotine now, didn't we?
But we didn't have it here, that was in fucking France.
Oh, we did. We did have a
Guillotine?
We did have, yeah. Charles I. Oh no, actually, it was a sword, wasn't it?
Was it an axe?
Axe. So if you were a rich person, you had cut with a sword.
Divorced, beheaded, died.
Yeah.
But where were they when they were beheaded? I mean, we haven't got fucking time. This is the worst pub quiz I've ever fucking been to.
That's a shitload of...
The last time the guillotine was used in France was in the 1970s.
Yeah.
That sounds like the lead up to a shit joke.
That's mad that you could be in flares being decapitated.
It was 1971, you can see the video on YouTube.
It's mad that you can be decapitated and Michael Jackson's around and not a paedophile. Like, I can't compute all those things in my head right now.
So, being a druid, you don't believe in an afterlife?
I don't believe in an afterlife where my apparent identity and personality survives death, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So you want to believe in an afterlife?
I do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ghost that is here, because it's quite a modern ghost.
Oh.
So what do you guys make of this? So apparently this
wearing Crocs.
That's godly in itself.
Yeah. They're not surviving to the other side. They're not getting past the fucking pearly gates, are they? I think heaven's like, it's got a dress code. You can't come in a football shirt. You can't wear trainers. So this is a man who worked here as a caretaker called Les, who's meant to haunt here. He died in the 1970s by falling off the roof while he was painting something, which is very sad. Now, the way he's meant to appear is there's meant to be sort of weird doors slamming when no one's around, paint pots falling from like the flies in the bigger theatre, a strange smell. But you would, if you...
all of these can be attributed to shit workmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or drop me paint. Oh, I fucking stink. Oh, it'll be less though.
Oh my god, that smells of chef's ass. Jesus. Weird is always in here after I've had a big night out, isn't it? There was a tale of fairly recently where the motion sensors in here went off one night, very late in the middle of the night, so they came down, the manager came down, and there was no one in here, nothing that sort of visibly disturbed it, and things like mice don't make it go off, but the lift in the building had moved from where it was, and apparently in the upper dressing rooms, which aren't used as much, the actors have seen sort of an apparition of Les. So there we go. There's also apparently a crying usher from the 1920s, which is a woman. So if you see a woman crying on shift, leave her be. It's not a 0 hours contract, it's just the 20s. And there's also a lady in red and the ghost of someone dressed as a cavalier here as well.
Oh, a cavalier? Why would be a cavalier here?
Rachel, I've googled a bit, I've not got a whole fucking information.
No grey lady though.
No grey lady.
Usually grey lady.
Yeah, usually grey lady, white lady.
Grey lady.
Yeah, that's got a grey lady.
Which kind of implies that they had no fashion taste or styling. What the hell's all that about?
Or they're one of those women that is like Stacey Solomon who are obsessed with grey and everything in their house has to be grey and rose gold.
Oh my god, Juice Plus ghosts.
Yeah,
no one wants a Juice Plus ghost, do they?
I want to wanted to ask, because you've chatted to me before about anomalies, and I wanted to ask you about a couple that I can remember you talking about. So, because the interesting thing about the anomalies that you've encountered is there's multiple witnesses, because that's also a lot of, if you've listened to anything ghost related, it's usually one person who sees it, or maybe two people, but this is multiple people who work in the mortuary, and you think that they're from all different sort of denominations and backgrounds, but will probably have similar encounters and experiences. Anyone who's worked in the healthcare profession, especially sort of end of life or in the death services, So I want to ask you about the one that you encountered in the, the COVID, like porta cabin thing. Not
in the cabin. Emergency refrigerator.
That's what. Oh God, what a great name! That's sort of my nickname. That's full of dead men. That's what I'm saying. So they brought in these, what were they? Sort of like shipping containers?
Yeah, so they brought us shipping containers because we had so many bodies during the COVID, they had to bring us extra refrigeration. So in one of these refrigerators, there was shelves on either side with a corridor down the middle, and we had to make numbers so that we could identify which body is on which shelf, yeah? So we made little laminates, little numbers and a bit of laminate,
lovely
cable tied them. It was really classy. Well, it was the NHS that fucking boot them. So we hung all these numbers at 1 through 70, and we were taking the bodies in. So I'm taking the body in with my colleague, and he would go right to the far end of the refrigerated unit. And all of these little numbers are hanging all tidily.
So sorry, when you're taking them in, so are they just like, because I don't know how it works.
So they're on a trolley. They're
right?
lying on a trolley. I'm at the foot end. My colleague is at the head end.
Okay.
So I've got my back to the door, and he's looking at the door.
Right.
So when we get to the far end of the refrigerator, he just did this. And I'm like, oh, fucking hell, I'm going to turn around, it's going to be like The Walking Dead. They're all going to be up on their feet, with their asses hanging out, because there's no back in the shroud. And so he was like, do something. I would do what? So I turned around and looked down the length of the fridge, and every single one of these laminated cards, which are hanging off a cable tie, every one of them, 70 of them, are all in that position, with a number pointing up at the ceiling.
So they were hanging like that.
They were hanging like this, and they
now
were
they're
all up like that.
Ooh.
And then he's like, do something. And we're like, what the fuck do you want me to do? And he's like, you do that Druid shit. And I looked laminated numbers doesn't really come in the handbook. You know what am I supposed to do with that? And they stayed there, so he was like, get out, get out. So we left, and they were still up when we left and shut the door.
Wow.
We told the others, all the others come running out to look, and they were all back in the downward position again. And we call that an anomaly. But I don't believe in ghosts.
Do you know what? I've gone cold, mate. It's either great aircon or I'm getting creeped out. I don't know what it is. Or it's Len.
Oh, it could be Len. No. Can you smell paint?
It smells summer.
I've got Snow Fairy on from Lush.
Yeah,
that's it.
I got a Lush perfume called, what's it called? The Good Times Roll, and it's smell of popcorn, which I didn't realise until I put it on, meant I constantly smell like mouse piss now. So I smell like I'm in an infested home, so I apologise.
That The Good Times Roll, though, as a name for a perfume, just sounds really sarcastic. It's like something I'd say when I've got to go somewhere I don't want to go. Oh great, we go to their house, let the fucking good times roll. They'll come, hiya, you're right, good to see ya. Leave, fucking pair of boring cunts. We're not going to your friends again.
I want you to know this has to stay in the room because I feel very embarrassed saying it out loud. Me and my friends were about 15 or 16, maybe 17, used to go to psychic fairs.
Give me a cheer if you've been to a psychic fair. Oh,
yeah,
you know
you're right to be fucking embarrassed.
Can I be honest? Give me a cheer if you're a northerner, you're from the northwest and you've been to a psychic fair. Give me a cheer if you're not a northerner and you've been to a psychic fair.
That's not bad, is it?
Do you know what I think? I think there's a real sort of northwest culture around this, and I think it's like from what you said before. When I was brought up as a Catholic, and I think there's a lot of my sort of family don't necessarily believe stuff, like spirits and ghosts and stuff like that. They bloody love a psychic fair though. And they love a bit of tarot, and they love a bit of, you know, that kind of engaging with it in that way, going to the psychic and that kind of stuff. So I think it's quite a...
Yeah, well, because I think it's interesting if you have places with a lot of big Catholic communities in particular. Have you heard of those, Liverpool? So there's a big sort of, a lot of like, you know, people raised with belief and, you know, and an afterlife and things like that. And the spiritualist church was very good at sort of mopping up people who were negotiating with that and then wanted a science side of it, because spiritualist church would often, and spiritualism would often test that, and, you know, sort of was early sort of forays into science. So the experience I've had with psychometry is, I was at the psychic fair, fuck me, that's embarrassing. I was only young.
How much was it in? 50p?
No, I don't think it was anything in, but if you got anything done, that cost more.
Oh, okay.
You know, like a sex club. So...
I like a sex club.
I bet you fucking do, yes.
Well, I said that with a microphone to my mouth.
Very close to the microphone as well. Honestly, my arsehole doesn't know what to do with itself up here. It's like, oh, these two.
Do you know, I imagine you'd really lighten the mood in a sex club. I imagine it'd be very, very serious, and everyone really going for it, and then you'd arrive and everyone go, oh, thank God, we can relax a bit.
Be like at every other party I have, everyone is sat around while you're regaling everyone with tales. So they go from being like, oh, karaoke and, you know, like smashing back food and booze, and then all of a sudden everyone's quiet and sat around Chris looking up like, I think the same in a sex party, sat there with their tits out there. Anomalies, you say.
The sex parties are all a bit vague, you know, because after the pandemic I hadn't been to one for a couple of years, you know. Tries to look like a decorator's radio when they came out of there. It was grim.
What's the other part one?
I'm sorry for that visual. Ghosts, anomalies.
I don't want to tell my story now.
You were going to a psychic fair, but you had to pay for everything.
I was going to a psychic fair. I'm now imagining Les's fucking radio. That's the problem. Ectoplasm everywhere. So, sorry.
But you brought me out.
So, I was in this psychic fair in Llanfair PG.
Right.
So, it was in the Carragabras.
Is it PG rated?
Someone could get us a double fancy logo golf is where it was, right? But we call it Llanfair PG because we're not fucking idiots. So, I was in the Carragabras, which is like, you know, one of those places where you have a 6-foot ball. So, we did actually have a 6-foot ball there. And we had 2 fights. So, we're in there, and they were actually teaching us about, what is it called again? Psychometry.
Yeah.
So they're teaching us about psychometry, and they were going that it's not good for. They were saying phones isn't good for it, but they were like anything that an item that is dear to someone that they have so like a wedding ring is a good one. And there was going kind of swap with people now, something you have on you all the time, and hold it and really just sort of think on it. And does anything appear in your mind? Because they were saying this is sort of the, you know, they're into sort of empowering people, I guess, to like. If they were interested, maybe thought they had a gift, that was the way to do it. So I take off my ring that I always wear, that my like teenage love boyfriend had got me, and it was very special to me. And we were broken up at the time, but I was absolutely heartbroken over it. And so we're going round, and then the woman running it, the psychic running it, comes over and takes the ring, and is holding it for the whole time, and then is going, oh, what do you see? And so I was going, oh, I see a blue door, and they're like, I live near somewhere with a blue door, and I'm like, yeah, well done, that's it, you're a psychic.
Unfortunately, Jimmy Savile had arrived, and someone's holding his rings and going, screaming in the head.
So she's holding this ring, and then she comes up and she does everyone else, and that's like the first bit, and then before people break off and get sort of like readings and things, and then she came over and she said, I'll speak to you later. Ooh. And gave it back, and I was like, oh, no. Brilliant, got a lump in my tit, have I? 15 years old dealing with all that. Must have been 16. So I'm sort of really eagerly waiting, and then finally the cue goes and I can go up to her, and she says, right, Jack. And I was like, the boy who bought it for me, that was still very much in love with it, was called Jake. And I was like, no, not Jack. And she's like, something like Jack. I'm really sorry, I know you're really heartbroken, you're going to get back together. And a few months later, I never told him about it, and we got back together. And I was like, fucking, that was weird. To nearly get the name, and then to go, this is from him, and you're going to get back together, I thought was really sort of strange. But then also, like, bullshit. I was like, do you know what I mean? I was like a teenager, like, with a shit ring that only another teenager could afford. And being like, this is a really important ring. Like, you know.
So this is what I was thinking about, stuff like psychics and things like that. You know, I think people do engage with it when, particularly, you might be feeling, particularly women, I think, engage with it when they're feeling a bit shit, you know, if they've been through a breakup or something terrible's happened. And then I think that kind of thing of like, she could have looked at your age and gone, oh, she's a young woman, she's probably because she's fucking upset. Oh, look at this ring, the bloke's bought this, it's shite. And then what are the popular names around your age group? I mean, how many Joshes do we know? Josh, Jake.
I would say he's the only Jake, and I tell you what, there were about 18 Chris's in my year. I would have gone safer and gone for Chris over that, but no, he was the only Jake, and the only Jack. Well, he wasn't a Jack either, but like there wasn't any Jacks, and he was the only Jake.
Okay.
So it was slightly more unusual. There's a lot of Welsh names as well where we're from. So yeah, that was my own encounter with that. But do I think it's true? No, but it was very fucking weird when it happened. I would like you to tell one more before we potentially take a break, because we're actually just chatting shit.
Hell.
Yeah, time's flying. I would like you to tell the
For us, I don't know how you lot feel.
Yeah. Like, don't worry, we're leaving in the interval. We're going to have all the table one empty, don't you worry. So in the mortuary, is it one big open room?
No, so there's several rooms. There's public areas, so people will come to visit the dead, or they'll visit the bereavement officers. And then there's the closed section behind, so the clinical section.
This is where the magic happens.
Yeah, so in there you've got various offices. You've got what they call a fridge room, which is standard. So it does what it says on the tin. It's just a room full of fridges. And then those fridges will back onto an autopsy theatre. So, you know, when I was working either...
You do a show?
Yeah.
You do, yeah. Yeah, it's a fucked up show, I tell you.
Very rarely an encore, though, you'll find.
All the ushers are crying there.
So I would spend most of my day as an autopsy technologist doing autopsies in the autopsy room.
And is that open plan?
Yeah, it's massive, open plan, so the majority of them will range from having 10 slabs all the way down to maybe one, depending on the size of the mortuary.
On average, how many autopsies would you do a day?
So in my last position where I retired on New Year's Eve, that was the North Wales Autopsy Centre, so we were doing like 1,600 autopsies a year.
Ooh. Oh, I've got to do the maths out.
So it's like 12, 15 a day.
That's a lot. That does seem... And
how many of you are working in that bit, though? So is it a couple a day, basically, you would do?
Yeah, each. 2 or 3 each a day.
And I guess each one it depends on...
It depends what they've died of.
Can I ask something really awful? Just sometimes you obviously get like a body and you're like, right, I've got to stuck with this. It's a mystery, I've got to get stuck in and find out. And sometimes you just get like a sandwich bag and you're like, tell us what happened.
Yeah. Or you'll get just a bag, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I've had loads of those, and the police has brought me a bag, you know, and they're all a bit shaky, especially if it's their first job, you know. And I remember one who came with this little bag, and I'm like, shit, there's not much in this. You know, I put it down, and I opened it, and I went, ooh. And he went, what's in it? And I went, what do you think's in it? Fucking Angel Delight. Because I love, You know, so yeah, it could be really grim, extremely grim. All the variations all the way up.
What a disappointing delivery that would be.
What of Angel Delight?
Well, the weird thing you were telling me as well is that you get really hungry after you do it.
Yeah, you get really hungry because your brain sees food. So it sees food, it sees opened meat, the smell of blood. So when the human brain smells blood, it will prepare your stomach for food.
Pudding.
And that happens for everybody, whether you're a carnivore, herbivore, vegetarian, vegan. If you smell blood, your brain thinks you're going to be fed. So everybody's like starving in there.
That's so gruesome, but so human.
Yeah.
I love it and hate it.
And apparently it tastes like pork.
Human.
Well, I don't know, I've not tried it, but
He says,
oh, yeah, now, aren't you?
Oh, we're ever so hungry then, it's just ever so full of meat.
But it does, but it makes you really hungry.
we're going to have a little break now so we can think about what just happened. But also, we would love to hear from you if you had any stories or encounters. So we thought you could get in contact in the break.
Yes.
We'll give you Chris's number. No. You can email us on your phone. There's Royal Court Wi-Fi that's just free to get on. So we'll have a break now, about 15 minutes, something like that. I'll fucking uncurl my spine.
Were you breathing really heavily down there then, or was it
I
Les?
No, I burped. I burped. I blew out my nose and tried to style out.
Oh my god.
It was an anomaly. It was
that
an
so that you
anomaly.
couldn't smell it?
You can smell licorice and gin and tonic. That's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to chat about is the bags, because I didn't realise not all bodies come in the same bag. Because when you watch fucking Silent Witness, they're all in the same shit, right?
See, that to me, that sounds like something a northern mum would say. Listen, not all bodies come in the same bag.
It's very true.
So wind your neck in and stop showing off.
So what's the most common bag?
So,
Me.
you know because people always judge people on what they wear, and you kind of think that might stop or come to an end when you're dead, but it doesn't. Because you will come in a specific bag, and we will judge you depending on what bag you come in, because there's a whole range of bags, So there's the standard Peaver bag, which is like the home baggings of body bags, and we call them the Wrexham bag. Because usually bodies from Wrexham are a little bit grim. And then there's
Don't let fucking Ryan Reynolds hear that, because I swear.
No, it's true though, it is true.
What's next?
So the next one's a blue.
Ooh.
Yeah, with a silver inner.
Oh, I know, I like that.
Very stylish.
It's like futuristic.
Spaceman.
But they're usually even nastier. That's usually something like radioactive or something like chemical or something nasty.
Bloody hell.
Gosh, so the actual body is kind of dangerous.
Dangerous to us, yeah. So the bag tells you.
You'll be in that because you're fucking poison. Put Rachel's WhatsApp groups in that fucking anti-toxic bag. That's what I'm doing.
So obviously when you get one of those bags in, you have to wear protective clothing.
Oh yeah, don't lick it.
Don't lick it.
You're in the hard way with that one.
The gear.
Yeah, all the gear.
Wow.
And gosh, so is that really rare then to see one of those?
Yeah, that's fairly rare.
So how many was you in your career?
Well, I've seen a fair few because I've worked all over Britain and also in parts of the United States as well. So I worked in Los Angeles for a while at the county coroner's office in Los Angeles. So that was grim.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
A lot of spicy Hollywood deaths there.
Yeah, it's like back then in 1996, statistically it was 8.5 homicides a day.
Yeah.
What?
It's mad, isn't it?
Half a homicide.
Obviously you
That's statistics for you.
I'm going to pop the bottom half in. I'll be back next week with this.
So after the blue bags, you get the fat bags. And I can say that because I'm fat.
Yeah.
And so the fat bags are the super bariatric bags, the ones that I've got like reinforced dowelings underneath them so they don't bend. Because you don't want them bending, because you grab one end of the foot end and it bends in the middle, you're fucked.
Oh, really? What?
Yeah, because how do you...
Straight?
So they need to be as straight as possible. So the super bariatric bags have got reinforcement rods underneath them.
Oh, wow.
And the bad thing was, like when I started, 1990, we didn't even have bariatric refrigeration. You just had normal refrigeration. But then suddenly you started getting bariatric refrigeration, and now there's super bariatric refrigeration.
Really?
Which is
That's
basically...
the goal, isn't it? That's how I want to fucking go. Get me on that big I just want to have a fucking hernia pushing me in there.
That's the thing, isn't it? Just sitting here with Scott. Because those people have lived. Oh, they've lived. You know, when you get pushed into the garage on a bed because they can't get you off the bed. You know, because all those thin people are going to feel really fucking stupid, aren't they, when they find themselves in hospital dying of nothing. Well, at least I'd have had a few bloody Krispy Kremes on me. All but a few.
We haven't got loads of time, so we're going to start working through some of the things that you sent over. Rachel, you've got quite a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to start here. Do people who've sent it in generally feel comfortable if we use your first name? Yeah. Great. Oh wait, anyone not feel comfortable? Okay, cool. I should have asked that, shouldn't I? I'd be like, no, and my name's Kiri. Okay, so this is a message we've had from Heather. Heather said, similar to Rachel, I was at my friend's house when I was 11 and her mum shouted at
Where's this going?
Fucking hell, mate. I was at my friend's house when I was 11 and her mum shouted upstairs to say that my dad had pulled up outside. And even though he wasn't due for hours, I just said, yeah, I know, my grandma has died. And when my dad knocked on the door, he told my mate's mum he had some bad news. I just knew, no idea how or why, but it was just a fact to me. Have you ever had sort of like a premonition like that or something?
No, I'm not so good on premonitions.
No?
Anomalies, yes.
I had a fucking premonition you'd be a fucking handful on this show. Heather, are you there? Heather, can you give it... What, oh,
She's
hello.
right at the front.
Great shoes, I've been looking at them for the past hour. Do you believe in ghosts?
No, I'm on the fence. I've had a few things like that I just can't
Like premonitions.
explain. Yeah, like not me personally, but like that was me. But then my friend was staying at her house, and she sat bolt upright in the middle of the night and just said, "My Uncle Hugh just died," and I was like, "What?" And she was just like, "My Uncle Hugh just died," and then the phone rang, and it was her auntie, and her Uncle Hugh had just died, and we were 12, 13 maybe, and it was weirdly enough the same friend. Maybe it's like some weird...
Yeah, you need to keep it. No, we had a word for you in the old days and it was witch. You got one there, RF?
Sarah. No? Does anyone know a Sarah? I love the casual nature of this email. So where I work was the basement, where the cellar and kegs are, and I've been locked in the cellar and heard a little girl giggling and running away. We were closed, and there was only me and another guy working.
Exactly.
You don't believe that?
Where's Sarah?
Where's Sarah?
Oh, so does it lock behind you, or did someone lock?
So I was in the cellar and the door slammed shut, and I went to open it and it wasn't as easy as it should be, and then I heard like a giggle.
People said that
going
about me.
down.
No one said that about you.
What was the giggle? Was the giggle like giggling at you, as in ha ha ha, I've locked you in kind of little giggle?
How do you know from a fucking giggle?
Right, I'll pretend I'm a ghost child, I look like one. So if I was going to lock Sarah in, I'd go,
That's not what children do. Can you tell she's childless?
alright. Child free, actually, is the phrase. Alright, thanks. Like that?
It wasn't so much a child.
No. I don't think you should be allowed no children without fucking laughing.
Was it like that, Sarah?
Yeah.
Thank you fucking very much. Nice to see you again.
So did anyone ever encounter anything like else like that where you worked?
Oh yeah, it's known that it's haunted.
What pub is it?
I don't know if you'll know, but Lark Lane.
Well, I like Lark Lane.
Yeah.
I once had a terrible fuck in Lark Lane. God, it was bad. It made me give up one night stands, that's how bad it was. Anyway.
This is from Becca. I shouldn't read out his surname. Becca, sorry.
Okay.
Chris, do you believe that anomalies only happen to some people and not to others? For example, nothing's ever happened to Becca, but has happened to her friends. So do you think people have more, if you're open to it, I would imagine?
I don't know, because in my experience, the majority of people that I've worked with have been very secular and not necessarily carried any beliefs, and yet they've still experienced these things.
Do you think it's more than a case of the places that you, like, you know, like our job is, hopefully, most people are alive that we encounter. So we don't, I mean, they might
there have been some,
yeah.
There've been some nights, yeah.
But we don't, it's not really an occupational hazard of what you do, whereas with you it's every single day. So do you think it's literally a probability thing?
So I think there are two particular camps. So there's I do believe, and usually it's because it's cultural, or that they want to experience something, or they've had a supernatural experience, so they're more likely to believe. And then there's the I don't believe camp, and usually those people, they don't believe in an afterlife, they've never experienced anything, and they don't think that there's any proof. And then there's a shitload of people who hover in between those two camps.
I change fucking daily on it. Like, generally I'm like, no, and then last night I was at home alone and I was like, let's go stay It was awful, like I hear someone sawing
Also,
downstairs.
I'd say I'm very much an atheist, and I do believe that, you know, there is no God, and I do believe that when you're dead, you're dead. However, I am very likely to be sort of swayed on reincarnation. I do think something does carry over in some sort of way. I think that there is something about part of your spirit that does, like what you were saying about ancestral sort of maybe feelings or thoughts or interests or certain things. I think you do retain them in some way, and I don't know how to explain that.
But isn't that just sort of like genetics being passed on? Rather than like coming back as a fucking moon cupper, I done bit all top two faves for me.
Oh, no, I don't think you come back as animals or anything. I think animals come back as animals. I think humans come back as other humans. And I think there are...
Does someone say correct?
There's a really sort of famous case of a young man in, I think it was Newcastle, and he said as a child that he kept giving all this information about how he was a World War One German soldier, and he gave all this information about where the plane had crashed, that he was not soldier, pilot, and he gave all this information and knew all this stuff, and his parents were like, yeah, we think he's actually the reincarnation of this person. They found a photograph of the person that he gave the name of. He looked exactly the same as him. It's fucking freaky. Does anyone know this that I'm talking about? No. I should have remembered the guy's name. Anyway, he died. The young man who said he was the reincarnation, this person died very young as well, and his parents were just both like, we 100% believe that he somehow was the reincarnation of this person. We can't explain it, whatever. I think there are certain things, like I have certain...
God's just run out of faces. I send that out, I was going to fucking know this.
I do think there's like, I don't know, I think that there's things that certain places that I go, sometimes I get a certain feeling about, or certain sort of environments I'm in, I get particular feelings, and I don't feel like it's my feeling. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah.
So from the perspective of a druid,
yes.
I would call that species consciousness.
Well, I know.
I've got a message here from Sarah. Sarah says, I was 15 in Spain on holiday with my mum, dad, sister and her partner. I was sleeping in the living room and I woke up during the night. The statue next to me lowered a newspaper and stared at me. Oh, statue's got a fucking newspaper. It's quite modern, isn't it? Oh, God. Then I looked straight ahead and a woman and a young girl walked past. I couldn't move for about 5 minutes and I then slept on the floor in my mum and dad's room for the rest of the holiday, which was about a week. What a shit holiday for you, Sarah.
And
I shat the bed and then had to sleep on mum and dad's floor.
And I'll never do ketamine again.
Well, some of that sounds to me like sleep paralysis. You know, when you're awake, but the dream is projecting onto this.
So I get sleep paralysis on a semi-regular basis. So my auntie has it as well, but she has the same thing every time. So when my auntie has it, my auntie Trish, she's terrified of everything. She wouldn't drive at night for years because in case she saw ghosts in the back of the car. I'm from a long line of lunatics, just to accept that, right? But she gets sleep paralysis, and what she sees or thinks she's seeing is a child in a raincoat with an umbrella in the corner of the room, and you're awake, but you think you're awake.
Isn't that a night terror? It's different, right?
No, so sleep paralysis, when I get it, I'm awake, I can't move.
Oh, yeah.
she has the same thing. She can't move, but you think there's something there. So when I get it, not only am I awake but cannot move, I'm upside down. It's like I either am or I'm not, and I don't even know if I am or I'm not, hanging off the side of the bed upside down. And that's my sleep paralysis, and I think there's somebody trying to get in the door, and I think I can just see feet.
Sleep paralysis is really rare, though. It's fairly rare.
Why is it every one of my fucking close friends have it? Am I a third?
So there's like two states of sleep, right? There's a hypnagogic state and a hypnopompic. So hypnagogic is when you're going into sleep, and you probably all encountered it, you know, when you're like lying on your sun lounger in Tenerife, and you're there and you just think, oh, I'll just have a little nap now, and then all of a sudden you get one of those involuntary things, and you look around, you know, because everybody thinks you're
Fart myself awake at the same time.
So that's the hypnagogic state. That's when you're falling into sleep and your mind is kind of disassociated. So your mind is really vulnerable to all of the impressions that are happening around you. So it can pick things up and decipher them in really peculiar ways.
And what was the other state?
Hypnopompic, so that's when you come back into your waking self.
Interesting. Yeah, because I get confused between sleep paralysis, which is that one, it's a figure in the corner of the room, or someone sat on your chest or back, right? And then night terrors, I think, is when the isn't it when the dream carries on when you come round? So like your subconscious imprints on the world, so you can open your eyes but the dream is still playing, which I think maybe, no shade, Sarah, might be what it was. Sarah, where are you, love?
Over there. But it could still have been a demon.
It could have been a demon, you're right. It could have been a demon with a newspaper. Can I ask firstly about the statue with the newspaper? What was that?
A newspaper, it was only when I seen them at that stage, he had a newspaper. So during the daytime, Nicole was there. It was just a wooden statue.
It was a CD holder.
You know what? I know exactly that fucking dates this story, doesn't it? Speaking, it's also a CD holder. So just normal, but then when you sort of saw it, it had this newspaper and then it looks at you.
It looked at me lowered the newspaper, and I don't believe in any of that. Still don't to this day.
What's it going to take, Sarah?
You've got to reach around and help you make a pot before you believe it. Have you got another one there? Ara?
Yeah, I have. I was going to say as well about sleep though. I'm terrible because I sleep very right. I talk in my sleep a lot, and I shout in my sleep a lot, and I put my leg in the air all the time, and I put my arm in the air apparently. And the other day sometimes I get, because I sort of thrash about in my sleep. Sometimes my boyfriend goes in his spare room. I've got a spare room, I'm doing alright. And he said, I woke up and sometimes I wake up and I'm still carrying on a conversation that I've had in my sleep. And the other day I woke up and I was shouting, because it's a Pokemon! I went, because it's a Pokemon, it's Pikachu! And that's what I was shouting as I woke up, and I went, pull yourself together, go back to sleep, you lunatic.
I have a repeated thing I do when I sleep, which is I scratch my arms. So I wake up scratching my arms. And a very weird thing is, maybe a few times a year I'll remember a dream. That's it. Like I never wake up ever. And it's very certain circumstances for me to be able to remember a dream, which makes me a lot less boring than people who talk about them all the time. and I'm always like, oh, it's fine. You know, I just go fall straight asleep. It's absolutely fine. I never remember my dreams. And then the time I have remembered it is when I've woken up scratched, because my partner wakes me up because I'm scratching myself, is that under my skin was just full of beetles. And I was trying to scratch it. And then
They're from it.
That's... But it's rarely mentioned, to be fair.
They never mention it, do they? Never mention it.
That little man chip on your shoulder popped up for a second, didn't it? Have you got any more there, love?
Yeah, Claudia. Hi guys, thank you so much for having us today. It's a pleasure. I have a ghostly story I think you will all enjoy. My granddad, who has recently passed, big up Barry, round of applause for Barry, told me a story about a service station he visited. It's terrifying already.
Fucking you. Interesting, no offence.
He used to drive lorries for a living, and one night he was reversing into a petrol pump and a gentleman was reversing him back. He went into the services to pay and asked the guy at the desk where the gentleman was who had waved him in, as he wanted to say thank you. Lovely manners from Barry there. The guy went pale and asked my granddad if he was pulling his leg. My granddad obviously was confused and was like, no. It turns out a gentleman of the same description my granddad had given had got run over reversing a wagon a couple of weeks before. My granddad swore down it was him. And on the cameras, no one was there.
How would you explain that then?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Ooh, scary.
My dad used to work as a long distance lorry driver, and he used to, is it Purple Hearts? He would take loads of drugs to keep him awake. Not that I'm saying that's what R.I.B. Barry did. I'm not casting aspersions, but how would you explain that from your perspective?
I don't know, I can't explain any of them, but that's what I find fascinating about them. Because even though I don't think it's particularly useful to say that ghosts don't exist, because I think they represent our very real and very legitimate fears. So because of that, in a way, I think that ghosts are very, very real, because they affect us on a deeply personal level. And even if you don't believe, we all love a ghost story. But perceptions are peculiar. So we had this guy, right, called Barry as well, ironically. It was a porter in the first mortuary I ever worked in. So every time the nurses used to come down for orientation in the mortuary services department, he would be like, oh, give us a call and I'll come down a bit earlier. So he'd come down and he'd go in the fridge. And the nurses would come round and say, oh, this is a fridge room, and this is a post-mortem room, this is a fridge, and this is a body, and Barry would go, oh! And all the nurses would go, ah! And we're like, fuck, you know, so we're sick to death of this. So one afternoon we called Barry and said, get your ass to the mortuary, we've got nurses coming. So Barry gets in the fridge, lying in the fridge, pitch black, you know. And a fridge, basically, is like 10 doors in this particular mortuary. So if you looked in door number 1 and door number 10, you could see all the way down. It's just a room full of racks with 10 doors, right? So he's in there, Barry, 20 minutes ago, nothing. He's getting cold now because it's 4 degrees in here, you know? Half an hour, nothing. It's like fucking bastards. So he turns himself around to push the emergency button, and as he does, the body next to him goes, it's cold in here, isn't it? Smashed his head with a cup, so shot out of the fridge like a frozen leg of lamb. He's crawling on the floor, screaming, puking up, throwing up everywhere. And we're like, fucking hell, we've killed him. And to this day, he's convinced that mortuary is not only haunted, but he experienced one of those ghosts. But what he doesn't know is that the body who said it's called you was me. So wrapped up, in a continental quilt as they were then, you know. So then I just rolled down the train. So when he said to my colleague that body spoke, she opened the door, she's like, there's no one in there.
So you just rolled down.
So I just rolled down the train. But he believes in ghosts because of that, so... Perception, isn't it?
That's such a good story. There's only one tiny thing I want to say is, what do you mean there's a fucking emergency button in there?
Get out.
What in case someone comes round?
Yeah.
Because there is there's that weird disease, isn't it, where you go into like rigor mortis, you can prick someone, they won't bleed, and then they come. Because every now and then someone will get buried and they'll go.
Narcolepsy.
Is it narcolepsy?
Narcolepsy when you fall asleep. What's it called?
Is it not called
No,
narcolepsy?
why is everyone pressuring me now?
It's a necro something trance or something, isn't it?
Yeah, where it's like basically you give off all the vibes of being dead.
Have you ever encountered that?
No, but it did happen to my friend Martha. I nearly said the name of the mortuary. It did, yeah. The woman had status epilepticus, so she appeared dead. So they brought her in dead. Martha was just pushing her into the fridge, and there's a series of rollers, and as she went over the rollers, she went. And she's like, oh, that's not right. She's like, get the crash team down, and she was alive.
Oh my god. Yeah. I mean, part of me would be like, she's here now, I'm just going to do it.
I was going to say, imagine you go striding, you have plans, you'd be like,
But we have had medical teams come running down, screaming in panic, we haven't certified this person as dead. And you're like, they've been in the fridge for an hour. Right out. No? So you never know, do you? Oh, you never know. See, when you die, some people think they go to heaven. We don't. That's a me. You've got bigger things to worry about.
Was it Edgar Allan Poe who was so terrified of being buried alive he had a bell erected with a little bit of string that went down to his...
Although that's
his finger, wasn't it?
No, that wasn't just him. That was like quite a common thing. That's where the term dead ringer comes from.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
So
imagine walking through that on a windy night. That's what I always say.
And that's ringing. Whoa.
I think it's very interesting what you say, Chris, about it sort of doesn't matter if ghosts are physically real and you can get a picture. If the effect on a person is the same as having seen them, then it's sort of you can imagine things into being, right? So it's like it's doesn't matter that it wasn't there. If you felt it, you experienced it, then it's real to your lived experience.
And death and the threat of death is what stirs our very creativity. Religions and spiritualities only exist to have answered one question: what happens to us when we die? That's why they exist, and they will always exist.
I thought it was to hide paedophiles.
And to hide paedophiles, yeah.
You know, before you said that, I almost said we're here for a good time, not for a long time. I'm glad that I didn't.
You would have given yourself away there, wouldn't you, mate?
Here's Max. Max. Hi, Max. So originally from Liverpool, lived over in Garston. Great, no idea. Back in the early 2000s, the thing to do for the moshers and the goths was to hang out at the pier head just outside the Liverpool buildings. I caught the bus into town like I did every Saturday to join friends. Goths had friends. As I got on the bus, I went to sit down on the left somewhere near the back. As I went to sit down though, I felt a weird feeling that told me that the seat was wrong. So I ended up on the seat behind. The bus got to somewhere in Toxteth and was shot at. Imagine that in Toxteth. The window shattered and the seat I was going to sit on was hit. Luckily, no one was sitting in it. I don't believe in God, but ever since that day, I have believed that there is something that tips the balance every so often.
Fucking
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Are you there, Max? Give us a little bit of hope. That's
Max died 22 years ago. Yeah, Max is just a guy there with a bullet wound in his head. Thank you so much for coming, Max. That's mad, that. That's
did you
incredible.
feel? How did it feel when that happened?
It was just a real, really surreal sort of situation because it happened and then I was just in a bit of shock and I just felt the wind obviously blowing on my face from the window that was empty. I was just like, oh God, what just happened?
Wow.
That's also the most goth story to tell when you go down the house and you're like,
Do you feel like you've had a second chance? You could have died that day.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, but...
That's someone who's like, I haven't done enough with my life if this is the second chance. You've been so lovely.
You have, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming along and being part of this. Thank you very much. Give it up for Kristopher Hughes!
It's alright, thanks for coming.